How's it going, everyone? It is Andre Williams, and over here we talk stocks and we focus on one thing: always protect your profits. And today we're going to be talking about Chargepoint and as well as for SOFI. Both of these stocks were able to post up green days. They weren't strong green days by any means, but it was a green day regardless. We also did see strength in the overall markets as well. But aside from that, many of you are saying, okay, what are the price levels looking like going into Friday? So we're going to be going over that. So I won't waste any more time. If you're new to this channel, I just want to let you know we have timestamps down below inside the description. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at the charts, we're going to take a look at the short interest, and then when all of that is done, we'll be going into the final thoughts. So let's get into those videos right now. So we're going to take a look at the chart for SOFI. Let's see how it performed on the day. So it ended up closing at $5.09, being up 0.20%, so only being up 1 cent. When we take a look at the range on the day, on the low it tested $4.84, and then on the high testing $5.22. When we take a look at the volume stats on the day, you can see we traded at 32.185 million shares, and the average volume over 10 trading days is at 31.203 million shares. So we had above average volume on the day, and you could also see, you know what, we saw some consistency in the stock. Now, when we take a look at our chart, which is our daily chart, we can see that SOFI does continue to trade below all of our major moving averages, which is the 50 EMA, the 21 EMA, and as well as the 9 EMA. We saw a low at $4.84. So what it looks like, does SOFI trying to form a bottom here? Are we going to continue to hold this 480 area? Well, you know what, we're going to have to see going into Friday. But for the most part though, we ended up seeing a high at $5.22. And you know what? This is quite the accomplishment. This is still higher than the previous day and also the day before that. So going into tomorrow, if we can get a move from SOFI going to $5.36, a level I've talked about many times already, I think that would be a good look in general, especially going into next week. And if it can get to 534, then you guys know the next levels in the $5.50 range, and then there's $5.76. If it decides to be bearish now, like I said, we have been doing a great job holding support in this $4.80 range, but if we decide to break below it, just know we have a 52-week low at 477. So we could have some buyers stepping in, but if they don't decide to do that, then I could see a pullback going to 470 and then seeing another push back up, and then we'd really want to see if $5 would end up being resistance from there. But in my personal opinion, with earnings coming up on November the 1st, we are going into earnings season. If the market is going to start picking up, I'm expecting SOFI to gain some momentum. Now let's take a look at the short interest. So we're going to take a look at the recent institutional ownership and short interest information for SOFI. So scrolling down on the page, green rows indicate new positions, while red rows indicate closed positions. So when we take a look at the recent filings for the 13th, we have Northside Capital Management LLC that purchased 11,493 shares, and you can see the reported value in thousands is 56,000. When we take a look at Activist Wealth Management, they have a position of 8,750 shares, and we also do see that comes with a value of 55,000. Now, when we take a look at the short interest, the off-exchange short volume ratio is at 44.24%, and then for the off-exchange short volume, it is just over 5.95 million shares. Scrolling down on the page, the short shares availability is at 10 million, updated 4 minutes ago, and then for the short borrow fee rate, it is at 0.67%. When we take a look at the history of the short volume, we can see for the close of the 11th, it is at 43.04, and then for the close of the 12th being at 44.24. So you can see it went up a little bit, and then when we take a look at the short interest percentage of the float being at 12.35%, SOFI does continue to have short squeeze potential. So we're going to take a look at the chart for Chargepoint. Let's see how it performed on the day. So it ended up closing at $13.50, being up 0.82%. On the low, it tested $12.45, and then on the high, testing $13.66. When we take a look at the volume stats on the day, you can see we traded at 7.962 million shares, and the average volume over 10 trading days is at 7.649 million shares. So we had above average volume on the day, and we saw some strength in the stock. When we take a look at our chart, which is our daily chart, you can see that Chargepoint is trading below all of our major moving averages, and plus on top of that, we ended up putting in a lower high and as well as a lower low. So going into tomorrow, what do we want to see? In regards to the upside, not only do we need to get above the previous high from the previous trading day, but I'd want to see a move going to $14.30, which is where we have the 9 EMA for Chargepoint. Considering that it closed at $13.50, I think this is a realistic goal for the play, especially if the market continues to trend up. Now, as far as the low that we had at $12.45, if you want to see a break below that level, you know that we have a gap that needs to be filled at $11.58. So I'd be really thinking about taking profits if you're trying to play the puts. But if it's able to actually hold $13, I really don't see it wanting to come down to fill in the gap in the near term. That is just my personal opinion. Like I said, it looks very likely that it could make a move to go to $14.30, and then it gets very interesting if Chargepoint is able to get back to $15. So as far as for the downside is concerned, look for weakness inside of the markets. If we don't get it, then again, as far as this gap is concerned, we'll revisit it later. Now let's take a look at the short interest. So we're going to take a look at the recent institutional ownership and short interest information for Chargepoint. So scrolling down on the page, green rows indicate new positions, while red rows indicate closed positions. So when we take a look at the recent filings for the 13th, we can have Good Life Advisors LLC that purchased 12,807 shares, and we can see that as a value of $189,000. And then when we take a look at some recent changes here, we have the National Bank of Canada that has a position of 463,443 shares, and we can see that there's a value change of 48.25%. I wanted to make sure I showed you guys that. Now, when we take a look at the short interest, the off-exchange short volume ratio is at 42.42%, and then for the off-exchange short volume, it is just over 1.09 million shares. Scrolling down on the page, the short shares availability is at 300,000, updated 2 minutes ago, and then for the short borrow fee rate, it is at 1.76%. When we take a look at the history of the short volume, we can see for the close of the 11th, it is at 41.53, and then for the close of the 12th, being at 42.42. So it went up a little bit, and then when we take a look at the short interest percentage of the float being at 17.25%, Chargepoint does continue to have short squeeze potential. So for my final thoughts for Chargepoint and as well as for SOFI, let's start off with Chargepoint. So we ended up seeing a low at $12.45 and we saw a high at $13.66. So we know that there was a gap that needs to be filled at $11.58. So with that said, if we see weakness inside of the market, I would look for Chargepoint wanting to fill in that gap. But in my personal opinion, that support that showed up in the mid 12s is something of significance, and it might be able to hold itself up even if we do see a little bit of turbulence. Keep in mind, we are going into earnings season for big tech companies, and if it's looking good, I'm expecting Chargepoint to gain some momentum. As far as for the high of the day, I know many of you are saying, well, you know what, it needs to do a lot better than that considering it did put in a lower high overall. So the price that we want to see Chargepoint being able to get to, which I think is very doable going into Friday if the markets are strong, is around $14.30. If it can get to $14.30, it does set up the stock fairly well going into next week to make that potential test to go to 15. Could it pull it off on Friday? Who knows? But getting back into the $14 level will definitely be a good look for the stock. Now, as far as for SOFI is concerned, we could see as far as for the 52-week low, that has been defended. It is at $4.77, and then we have SOFI holding it down in that $4.80 range. So we want to see that being the potential bottom. Can it hold up? If it decides to hold up, you guys know what I'm about to say. We want to see SOFI making a move going to $5.36. It did see a high at $5.22, so that was actually really good, but we need a lot more than that. If it can get to $5.36, you know the levels, the 550s, and then the next area where we can start seeing some resistance is around $5.76. A break above that level will send it right up to $6. I was expecting a little bit more from the play considering that we saw a lot of strength in the market, but it is also understandable because we did have quite the drop after CPI came out and then the market started to run back up. And if you take a look at the mid cap and small cap stocks, they really didn't move a lot. And when we take a look at the big big tech stocks, they did move a bit, but considering the drop that we had inside of the pre-market and then they recovered, I wouldn't say that, you know what, it was a strong move by any means, especially when we take a look at where they were at the beginning of the week. But with that said, we do have bank earnings that's going to be coming out on Friday. This will have an impact on the overall market, and you know, both of these stocks can be impacted depending on what that direction is going to be. But if the momentum continues to go to the upside, especially with earnings season going into next week from big tech, I want to see these plays gaining momentum. And I know you guys can agree with me. You guys have seen these plays run up before, especially with the overall market, so it shouldn't be surprising to you. And I just want to make sure that you guys are in a position, especially for my traders out there, to be making some money. If you've been buying on the dips, buying near those 52-week lows, you should be seeing some profit, or you should have been making money in general if you were swinging or if you're going in and out. If you were an investor, then of course you want to make sure you're loading up on the dip. When you have those high conviction plays and they're hitting 52-week lows and they come with a lot of potential and they're running strong businesses in the background, you know that's a good look. You know that is an indication to say, well, you know what? Dollar cost average in, get that cost down, ride that momentum up, and you can decide what to do from there. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see how these stocks perform going into Friday. We'll talk soon.